172 straight days of Clippers talk for you.
Put it up, man.
Welcome in. I'm Adam Osland. It's good to be with you guys. I think that's how many days it's been. Yeah, 172. Coming up on today's show in just a little bit, we'll be joined by Lucas Hann. Don't call him Han. He'll be on here as we revisit a conversation we had preseason about Ivica Zubac and where he ranked among centers in the NBA. Well, with just 11 games left in the regular season here for the Clippers, let's get back to that convo and see where Zoo stacks up now. Is he truly a top 5 center in the league?
Get out there, Ben, and put that shit up, dog. Put it up, Ben.
Yeah, I'll also ask him about Ben Simmons, since Clavon is begging for it. We'll also go through some of the numbers with this team.
I don't know. What did the numbers say? Shit.
Thanks, Kawhi. Ooh, thank you, Deca Fantastic, for the super chat here. Yes, 172 days. Like, I wasn't expecting $172. I'll take the $2. Here's your $2. As the line goes on one of my favorite movies ever, Dirty Work. R.I.P. Norm Macdonald and Bob Saget. Happy Tuesday, Co. Elijah's in here saying, put it up, Ben, indeed. We got the second one, the new version of it, where his voice is cracking.
Put it up, Ben. Put it up, Ben.
We are accumulating new sound bites by the day right now, including this one after Kawhi was asked about the OKC Thunder and how good they are defensively.
I don't know. What did the numbers say? Shit.
That's such a good bite. I'll start with this. Speaking of Kawhi Leonard, I don't like that I'm starting with this. I don't enjoy giving Stephen A. Smith any more pub, but it's not like it matters. It's not going to increase his follows because I'm talking about him on Clippers Talk. If I thought I had an effect that large on his or that great of an effect on his status, yeah, I probably wouldn't play this right now. But here was Stephen A. earlier today doing what he does best, in his mind at least, hating on Kawhi.
If the Clippers have a chance, I think Kawhi Leonard should be an X factor.
Okay, first of all, Carlos Boozer, who is the newest analyst on ESPN, is just always calling somebody an X factor over and over again. And calling Kawhi Leonard an X factor, who's like the best player on their team, seems a little bit strange to me. He's the X factor. It's like, well, in a way, I guess, because of his health issues and the variance in play, if you get Kawhi playing at a top 5 level. But it's like, should you really be talking about a top 5 player or the best player on their team that can be a top 5 player in the league as the X factor? X factor type should be somebody like Bogey, who, if he's hot, could swing a series in the Clippers' favor. Or, Ben Simmons maybe, because of the small ball units. Kawhi Leonard as an X factor to me doesn't make a ton of sense.
But the Clippers have a chance. I think Kawhi Leonard should be an X factor. You don't think
Kawhi, so? First of all, what's the date the playoffs start? What's the date the playoffs start? Because the date that the playoffs starts, Kawhi Leonard, you could pencil in by week 1 of the playoffs, he's going to be out. All right, that's the problem. That's why I'm not picking the Clippers. It's not because of their coaching, because Ty Lue is great.
It's the same old story. Him hating on a guy for having chronic knee issues. Look, we don't know his status for tomorrow's game yet. We'll update you on James Harden here in a second, because earlier in the season, Kawhi said basically, yeah, it's day to day. You never know when the knee can flare up. It's problematic. He doesn't want this. He wants to be playing. Why attack a guy like this if you're Stephen A. Smith? It seems like far too easy of a cheap shot, but then again, that's what he's good for.
All right, that's the problem. That's why I'm not picking the Clippers. It's not because of their coaching, because Ty Lue is great. Jeff Van Gundy is great. James Harden deserves our props and our love for the way that brother has played this year. Norm Powell, oh my God, he was an all-star.
So praising others to indirectly hate on Kawhi here. He's going to talk about them and Say what Kawhi's not doing.
Norm Powell. Oh my God, he was an all-star for me. I love that brother. Listen, they deserve a lot of credit, but as long as a reliant commodity is Kawhi Leonard, scratch it. You can what's today's date right here? What's today's date right here? This day here. I'm just looking for the date right here. March 25th. March 25th. Yeah. I'm just looking at it. It's a couple of weeks. All right, a couple of weeks before the players we get about 3 weeks. Okay, call me in 3 weeks. Let's see where Kawhi at. Let's see. Trust me. There's no way in hell I'm waiting on. I'm depending on Kawhi Leonard. Not at all. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. No.
I can't stand this guy.
Now, if healthy, that's different. But we know that ain't gonna happen.
Now, if it's healthy, it's different. But we know that ain't gonna happen. Like, you want to be pessimistic and cynical, but he just takes it to a different level. We know Kawhi has had issues staying healthy. Yes, when the playoffs come around, he's had unfortunate bad luck. That's all it is. It's not like he doesn't do everything to try to be available. Blaming a guy like this. Yes, lazy analysis, said Jay Bose in the chat.
Now, if healthy, that's different. But we know that ain't gonna happen.
Playoff Kawhi?
Huh?
Playoff Kawhi.
No. I said health. I know if he's healthy, what the brother can do. The brother's, he's a sensational player. I know what he can do. I'm saying to you, I don't trust. And by the way, don't go by him dropping 30 and walking off the court healthy. Because you know what? When he walk into the locker room, he can get hurt. When he go in the shower, he can get hurt. When he go to his car, he can get hurt. When he go to the lounge afterward, he can get hurt. Anything.
See, him trying to turn into a joke that Kawhi is injury prone, an all-time great player. That's what rubs me the wrong way. That's what I don't like here.
Possible with him when it comes to missing games. I'm telling you right now, don't depend on Kawhi Leonard. If you're going to talk about the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard, just scratch it. It ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. You could book it.
God. Just so annoying. Just so annoying. Look, I'm not saying that his knee hasn't had issues around playoff time, but like, you could leave it at that. You don't have to go into this tirade. You don't have to go into this rant. You don't have to say, hey, I'm looking at my watch and what does it say? And turn it into a joke. I don't know. It's not funny to me. This is what Stephen A. Smith does. It's just, yeah, that's what ESPN has become. All right, let's talk about an update on James Harden. Here's Law Murray speaking with Coach Lue today at practice, where James Harden is with the team. Was there putting work in? Here was Coach Lue with the update.
How you feeling?
Good.
I guess the most important thing, how's James feeling? What's the plan for him?
He's feeling pretty good. So, we don't know the plan for tomorrow yet. Just keep it day to day. But he feels a lot better than when it actually happened.
We don't know what the plan for tomorrow is yet, but he's feeling much better than he did when it actually happened.
But he feels a lot better than when it actually happened.
What exactly is he dealing with? What did you learn about that?
Yeah, I ain't speaking on that. He said he feels better.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. How about the rest of the roster? Is everybody ready to practice?
Yeah, everybody's ready to go. So,
Everybody else was ready to go and practicing. That's good to hear.
Good practice. Might be our last real practice to the playoff start. So just get in here, pay attention to detail, continue to get better, and go from there.
So it might be the last real practice before the playoffs start, said Coach Lue. So I'd say a consequential, important practice that they have going on today in New York before they get ready to take on the Knicks tomorrow at MSG and then Brooklyn on Friday. One more time, if you missed it at the beginning, here's the update on James Harden.
Good.
I guess the most important thing, how's James feeling? What's the plan for him?
He's feeling pretty good. So, we don't know the plan for tomorrow yet. Just keep it day to day. But he feels a lot better than when it actually happened.
What exactly is he dealing with? What did you learn about that?
Yeah, I ain't speaking on that. He said he feels better.
Okay. There you go. Said he feels better. Now, there will be an injury report sometime around, I think it has to be within around 24 hours before tip-off. So we might have it for you as it goes live within maybe the next hour and a half here. Lucas Hann is set to join us in just a little bit. Lucas Hann, don't call him Han. The injury report might say he's questionable. And he could be upgraded tomorrow, or maybe it'll say he's out. My guess is he's questionable for tomorrow's game. But James Harden is one of those tough guys that doesn't miss many games. This is who he is. He's an absolute tank. He's missed 3 all season for the Clippers, despite having a usage rating of the likes of SGA. Well, he's 35. SGA is 26 or 27. Like, it's incredible what he's been able to do for this team. And he's been playing much better when you look at the percentages as of late. While he did struggle in that game against OKC, and some of that came after the injury, where he was hobbled after taking a hip check from Lou Dort. And then after that, he took a couple of steps and it sounded like he sprained his foot, is what he said in the locker room post game. It's something he's dealt with before. But if you look at the month of March, James Harden is averaging 26 points per game, 43% from the field, 37% from the outside, 9.5 assists to 3.7 turnovers per game. When it looked like for a second he was starting to slow down after those 2 Laker games, he picked it back up. He had the 50-point game on the second night of a back-to-back against Detroit. And then he had 27, 29, 25, 24, 25, 31, 22, 30, and just 17 against OKC. Did struggle in that one. If it's close, he's probably playing. That's typically how it works with James Harden. But, yeah, Terry said it. If James Harden is questionable, he will play. 99% chance. Mark saying, I'll rest him just to be safe. Maybe. They got a day off, though, between the Knicks game and the Brooklyn game on Friday. Jay Bose said Lou Dort is always playing out of control, causing injuries. Really don't like playing against OKC because of that more than anything else. Yeah, he's a little reckless at times with his movements. Obviously, Paul George was injured by him. Not saying it was intentional, but ran into him on a rebound a couple of years ago. Just seems like Lou Dort is gathering that reputation. There's, a very fine line between playing hard and playing dirty. I'm not saying he's a dirty player, but I know a lot of people are questioning some of those physical plays out there by him. Master of Keys said, how confident are you in St. James down the stretch in a playoff game? Guy seems to choke during crunch time versus good teams. His playoff history is up and down, you can say. The highs are really high. The lows are really low. He's had some really bad elimination games. He's had some really good playoff games. I mean, the series a couple years ago against Boston when he was with Philly, where he has multiple games where he drops 40 points. But then he had games at the end of that series where it looked like he started to check out a little bit. People are saying we got some breaking news here from Law Murray. The LA Clippers report that James Harden has right foot soreness. He is questionable for Wednesday night's game against the Knicks. There you go. He's questionable. That was my best guess. He's questionable with right foot soreness. I'd say that's probably best case scenario. He's not out. He's not on the injury report, but he is questionable. Everybody else, when it comes to the injury report, you're good. The only, other guy that's been out for a while is Jordan Miller with that left hamstring, but nobody else is on the injury report. It's James Harden questionable with right foot soreness. It is official now. So I thought the news would come soon here. It did. Glad we got it to you live. I'd say he's still in the running to play tomorrow because he's James Harden and he's questionable and not out. So there's a decent chance. Jay Bose said, I don't get dirty vibes from him. talking about Lou Dort, but he's just out of control. I hated playing against guys like that growing up. Yep. I think that's well put. Some guys, he's the type of guy when he's on your team, you're good with it, you're rooting for him, you'd view it as he's playing hard, he's giving 100% effort. When you're the opposition and a guy like that is flying around on the court, it can look a little bit reckless at times. Very shocking that BJ Matthews would say sit him for tomorrow's game. Known Harden hater. Deca Fantastic said, my guess, Harden rests both New York games. It'd be hard to keep James out for both. It could come down to at this point, and this was my guess heading into this. He's questionable because they're going to see how he feels when he wakes up tomorrow after going through some of practice today. That's what they're going to look for. How does he feel tomorrow after doing some practice work with the Clippers today? Mark Jag said, you would love Lou Dort if he's on your team. He's that type of player. Hate to go against him, but love it when he's on your side. Yeah, basically exactly what I was just saying. Terry said, we need James Harden for upcoming 3 back-to-backs since Kawhi will miss half of those games. That's a good point. They still have 3 more back-to-backs. It's fair. I've just been amazed with the stuff he has played through this season, last season too. Some are saying more time for Patty Mills to play for a bit. Maybe. Johnny626 said, and he ain't on my team, and I hate his ass. I hate his. Talking about Lou Dort. It's kind of eye the beholder with him. Yeah, it's rough when you're going up against him. God, there was a play in the first half where Kawhi Leonard pushed him around something fierce that you just don't normally see against Lou Dort, who's linebacker size out there. Elijah Robertson said, time for Point Ben.
Get out there, Ben, and put that shit up, dog. Put it up, Ben.
I side with Law Murray, who we had on yesterday. Check out that show if you missed it. I think Bogey would get the start if Harden was out. Melvin Powell Jr. says Harden will play but be on a minutes restriction. He has no intel on this. It's just a guess, but he makes it seem like it's definitive. That's how Melvin Powell rolls. BJ Matthews said, being asked about if he's a Harden hater, he said, on Clippers, nah, just don't lower the bar for him. Adam, don't like it. LOL. Serious point, though. If he was hobbled tomorrow, let him rest. I'm sure if he's hobbled, they probably will. But they said he was feeling good at practice today. They said it sounded like he was feeling much better than what he was. Again, here was Coach Lou with Law Murray earlier today.
I guess the most important thing, how's James feeling? What's the plan for him?
He's feeling pretty good. So, we don't know the plan for tomorrow yet. Just keep it day.
He's feeling pretty good.
What's the plan for him?
He's feeling pretty good. So, we don't know the plan for tomorrow yet. Just keep it day. But he feels a lot better than when it actually happened.
What exactly is he dealing with? What did you learn about that?
Yeah, I ain't speaking on that. He said he feels better.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's feeling better. Alan, didn't mean to ignore you. I'm sorry. I know you said something earlier. You were calling Lou Dort Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer was definitively dirty. Lou Dort, I don't think we can say that as fact yet. I think he's still a young player. We'll see. There are some questionable plays with him. As James Harden, just got the news, is questionable for tomorrow's game in New York against the Knicks. You know what, though? Let's get to our guest. Join the show right now is the big boss man, Lucas Hann. Don't call him Han from 213 Hoops and the Lab, the Jam, the podcast, and they were nice enough to do one. Even after a loss, they broke their policy of no win, no pod, giving us one late last night. It was him and Robert Flum. I listened to it earlier today. Sounded good as usual. Lucas, thanks for joining me here on Clippers Talk.
Yeah, man. Thanks for listening. Blame the policy departure on Dr. Shap. Shap can't help himself.
Shap is
I
putting
think
you boys in line.
I think he would have us doing 2 episodes a day if we didn't have anything else going on. Yeah, he's on us about it.
If you were doing that, you'd beat my crazy ass right now. So, your initial thoughts on James Harden now being listed officially as questionable for tomorrow's game. Coach Lou said he's feeling better. It's James Harden. What's your best guess on if he actually plays against the Knicks or not?
I think he's fine. I think he plays.
Ooh. If he didn't play, if he woke up tomorrow morning and it was a little bit more sore after going through practice today, who would you have in the starting lineup?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think if you want your best chance to win, you go Bogey. And I think like a Bogey, Norm, Kawhi, Dunn in there for a little extra ball handling with Zoo. I think you see what you go there. I think if you want the most information, you would start Ben Simmons.
I like that. I think that's interesting.
I want the best chance of winning. I would start Bogey, but I do think Ben, you would learn a lot.
Yeah, if you play it safe, you go with Bogey. If you want to see if there's a higher ceiling possibly of what you can get out of Ben Simmons, you'd start him and see what he can do. And he did look good looking for his offense a little bit more against OKC. How have you felt about Ben Simmons overall in his play as a Clipper after one point missing, I think, 7 straight games with a knee injury himself that he was dealing with? But he's come back. He's looked mostly the same from what we've seen so far. Like, is there more to Ben Simmons? Like, when you say starting him to get more information, what's the information you're trying to gather exactly?
Yeah, I think that we've mostly seen him as sort of a small ball center. Even on offense, he's not actually often the ball handler in the pick and roll. He's far more often the guy playing at the high post, dribble handoffs, short roll, play make, stuff like that. So if they actually put him in the starting lineup and say, you're going to play with Zoo instead of in place of Zoo, you're going to be the point guard. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if you do that, you probably can't start Dunn because of the shooting. So maybe then you start Nico as the back in the other forward spot like they've been doing.
Well, plus they're going up against Karl Anthony Towns. And that was the first game I think Nico started a few weeks back after those string of starts he had. It was to get him up against Cat.
Yeah, I do think that change, because it wasn't a one-game change. They did it for a stretch of time, and then they only stopped when Norm came back. I think it was more to do with getting that shooting into the starting lineup. But and again, if you're going to start Ben and Zoo, you really do need that extra shooting in the starting lineup. So I don't know. I think Ben right now, I think obviously he's been a successful pickup for the Clippers. He's doing like part of Kevin Porter Jr.'s job and part of Mo Bamba's job. And he's doing both of those better than either of those guys were capable of doing them. I think he's definitely been helped by the fact that, Bogey coming in, kind of taking over part of Terrence's job, and the other part of KPJ's job has been such a massive upgrade that, those Ben lineups look really good by comparison with those bench lineups earlier in the season. Right now, if the Clippers were, in a win or go home game tonight, I don't think that Ben would probably play more than 6 or 8 minutes for me, because I don't really think you've seen enough to play him at the same time with James and Zoo. And you have better support pieces that can shoot the ball, and those guys need to play a ton. It's not a win or go home game. If James is out, which, like I said, I don't think he will be, I'd like to see a lot more of Ben. I think you need more of Ben's skill set if James isn't playing. And like I said, you might learn something about, can you play Ben, Zoo, and 3 shooters? I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
So it's not often that we scrutinize a regular season game as much as we have over the last couple of days, because we had a couple of days off and they happen to be going up against the best team in the league, and they lost closely to the OKC Thunder 103-101 on Sunday night. What's the biggest reason in your mind that game fell through the cracks against the Clippers?
Yeah, I think probably if I had to go one reason, and I think it's the type of game with a narrow margin where there's a lot of different factors at play, right? I would say Norm's not back yet. I think if the Clippers have the Norman Powell they've had in any other month than March, they win that game pretty comfortably. And that's just, that's not even a critique of Norm. Like, he's coming back from a hamstring injury. He's working his way back. He hasn't found his rhythm yet since the injury. Just is what it is.
What did you think of some of the lineup changes with Coach Lue back in? And have you noticed a drastic difference between the way B. Shaw was coaching for 5 games and then Lue comes back against OKC?
No, I think all that is overstated. I mean, right? Like, these coaches, they build the strategy for the game together. Like, the decision made in the moment, a lot of the decisions that we think are being made, like, in the second quarter, they're trying, a mirror on SGA for the first 2 minutes or something, right? Like, these decisions are made in advance in a meeting room with a whole crew of scouts in there. Like,
yeah, it's like Dave Roberts with the Dodgers.
Yeah, like, sometimes, yes, the coach has to make a decision in the moment because someone gets injured unexpectedly or whatever. Even then, they consult with the assistant. So, yeah, I think the difference here is pretty overstated between the two coaches. I've seen some fans chatting about it. I don't think there's nothing there.
Yeah, I think it's like when the backup quarterback comes in and he gives you a good quarter or a good half and everybody falls in love with him and they think, if you stretch this out over 17 games, what could we have with this guy?
Yeah.
People fall in love with the assistant coach that easy too. And I think as good as B. Shaw was, a lot of this has been hinging on the fact that Kawhi has turned into a different player over the last 2 weeks, or at least gotten back to looking more like himself. He hits a game winner in the first game with B. Shaw, which was controversial in some ways because they ran out the clock instead of just going for a shot early on where they could have extended the game. Had they had lost that, B. Shaw would have been under the microscope. In fact, when he spoke with Coach Lue, I think Coach Lue was like, what the hell were you doing? That's what B. Shaw, that's how he described it with the way they ran that last play. So it's not as simple as, well, they went 4-1 with him, and we don't have to look at any of the context of those games and the details of what actually happened.
I seem to recall the decision in that game to close with Amir Coffey over Nico Batum, having a lot of people at the time going, God, Brian Shaw should never be allowed to coach a game again in his life. And then they win, a few more, and now it's a different story, right? I think it's been definitely a tumultuous little stretch there with Shaw and with Lue and Van Gundy both missing. But like, it's not like the team changed out their whole playbook because they found out a few hours before the game that the head coach was going to be out. Like, they're not running a different defense. They're not doing the things. It's not like they started doing something that they haven't already been practicing and doing in games for months.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have been saying, and Old Man, and I think the rest of his name is Old Man Yells at Clouds. He says here, that's not true, and you all know it. B. Shaw schemes are significantly different. When did they have time to implement a different playbook? I'm just wondering when that happened. If you want to say that, well, Ivica Zubac was getting more touches, even that I kind of debunked just going through the game log and seeing how many times he took this many shots when Coach Lue was coaching him versus B. Shaw. Like, none of this holds water when you actually look into the details.
Yeah, and I would have liked to see Zoo get the ball. I mean, we've said, all of us have said for years, we would like to see Zoo get the ball more. I would have liked to see him get the ball more in this game against Oklahoma City, but also, like Oklahoma 4 guards, they play very aggressive defense where they go for steals, and like the Clippers struggled to execute their offense against it. I don't think they came into that game saying, yeah, we're going to not pass the ball to Zoo as much anymore, right? Like, I think that
Lucas,
they struggled to
last
execute what they wanted.
turnovers of the game involve passes to Ivica Zubac, trying to get him the ball. The last 3 turnovers were trying to get Zoo the ball.
Yeah, Oklahoma City, just like we've talked so much this season about how good the Clippers defense is, right? And how often you see teams that are playing well. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at how stupid your chat is. I'm sorry.
Brian. What comment in particular?
Brian Shaw's coaching had everyone shooting very good splits. Yes, Brian Shaw. If only Ty Lue had told Kawhi Leonard to make 57% of his threes, he would have started doing it earlier. But Brian Shaw, yes.
He told Bogey to have a bad shooting game. Apparently, Coach Lue told him that against OKC. Don't have a good shooting game against OKC.
Yeah, what happened is actually a bunch of guys on the team are trying to get Ty fired because they like Brian better. So they intentionally missed their shots against Oklahoma City.
There are people in here that believe Coach Lue is up against it this season, and this is a make or break year for him when he just got the extension last summer.
This is not a make or break year for anything, really. The only person who I would say it's a make or break year for is going into the season, probably James Harden, because if James Harden had had a huge regression this year, that would have really changed the trajectory of how the Clippers think about him going forward. But I think with the season he's had, the Clippers probably just run it back. But that's another story.
Unless they get Trae Young. Continue though on the line of that conversation with the OKC game. There is one thing I would have criticized Coach Lue for, and I did, and a lot of people did. Him taking that timeout on the inbounds play with about 1:30 left, which was their last timeout. I get it. The next possession in a game that tight is the biggest possession, and they were down by 1, and he felt like they weren't getting very many good shots, and he wanted to draw something up. And maybe you get up by 1, and it feels like more than that in a game that close, and you really have an advantage. But I think you got to hold on to that last timeout.
Here's what I'll say, Adam. You tell me if this makes it better or worse. I think he didn't know it was his last time out.
That would make it worse to me. Make it worse to me.
Okay, so hear me out here, right? Would you rather have someone have a bad philosophy that's going to cause them to make bad decisions over and over again? Or would you rather someone have a good strategy and have an incorrect piece of information in their brain so they make a mistake once? I mean, it is a bad mistake. It is that was a as much as like the turnover off of Zoo's fingertips at the end, right? Like that burning that time out at the wrong moment was probably more consequential in the Clippers losing the game than like the non-call on Shea fouling Zoo underneath, right? Like it was a bad error that really cost the Clippers, likelihood of winning that game in the last couple of minutes. It's kind of an error. I don't know, like James Harden dribbles the ball off his foot sometimes, right? That's what it felt like to me. This was Ty Lue's James Harden dribbling the ball off his foot.
No, when you pose it like that, I agree. It's better to just make a mistake like that is so infrequent, but it's not part of your principles or your overall philosophy, that it would happen many times over. It just was one of those things. I don't know. I guess I'd be a little bit surprised, but maybe it's because he ended up losing a timeout off the challenge that they won, but there were still free throws taken anyways by Case and Wallace, because it ended up not being a foul on Zoo, but it was a foul on James Harden instead. I do want to push back against, like, I'm not trying to hate. I don't know who all these people are. Apparently Old Man is in the chat is a former hooper. He knows the game. I would say this: playing the game, talking the game, and knowing the game are all three different things. For instance, Michael Jordan played the game at a very high level, may have been the GOAT. Does that mean he could evaluate talent very well? No. He proved that in his post-game front office executive work. They're all different things. So just because you played the game doesn't mean that you know more than anybody else. And that's why there's people in the front office, in every front office now pretty much, that just run numbers and didn't play the game. It's changed. Just wanted to get that out there. Anything else of note to you in that game against OKC that were gaffes by the Clippers, or, things that were actually encouraging even in a loss? Like, I don't know, how good Kawhi Leonard looked again against some really good defenders. Yeah,
Kawhi looked good. I think the Clippers did a good job on Shea. I really think that, look, it's a high emotion, high stakes game. It was a slug it out game. Both teams were struggling to shoot. And the Clippers, just come off 2 good wins against Cleveland and Memphis. I feel like it felt like a playoff game, at least from the Clippers' perspective. It felt like a playoff game. Like it felt like a real measuring stick. How good are we? Who are we? Are we going to make this push to stay out of the play-in tournament? All of these things feel like they're hanging in the balance of this game. Jalen Williams is Oklahoma City's second best player. He didn't play. Chet Holmgren is probably their third best player. He didn't play. The Clippers didn't play their best game. The Thunder were missing 2 of their best players, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander shot poorly. Although I think a lot of folks are saying, oh, well, Shai had his worst game of the season and the Clippers still won, or the Clippers still lost. I think the Clippers did the best anyone has done on Shai this season, is maybe another way of looking at that. But
a lot of people criticize Coach Lue for playing DJ that much, and I would say if you looked at the matchup data, I think SGA went like 1 for 10 or 1 for 11 against Derrick Jones Jr. That was the reason he was closing the game.
Derrick Jones Jr. was, I have no issues with Derrick Jones Jr. I do, when you get down the stretch there, you just need those shots. I think maybe some offense defense with Nico to get that corner sniper in there can help. And Nico, of course, still has the length to be good on defense. But I'm ready to start Derrick Jones Jr. I have no qualms with how much he's playing.
Did it change your mind, I guess, then at all when you look at all those factors of how you felt about a potential series against OKC?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm not as confident in the Thunder as I probably typically would be in a 60-win team. I think a lot of what they do is kind of dive and throw themselves into contact. Like Shai, for as often as he is so polished and so cool and so smooth in between, like the free throw line and the restricted zone in that 12 to 8 foot range, right? There are times where he kind of throws himself into contact looking for a call. And I think some of the younger Thunder who are athletic and aggressive, but not necessarily strong players, right? Like they're a little more wiry framed players. A lot of these support guys for the Thunder on the wings. I just wonder the playoff physicality. I mean, we saw them, struggle against the Dallas team last year that struggled against the Clippers team that didn't have Kawhi Leonard. So there's, I'm curious to see how that goes. I do just think talent-wise, especially with J-Dub and Chet, the Clippers are still a ways away from being ready to really take them on in a series. And I think if the Clippers close the season really well, if they get into the 6th seed, if they can win in the first round, we start talking about maybe building something over the next 2 months that gets you to feeling like, yeah, now we're ready for this challenge. I think if they falter to end the season, if they finish in 8th place, they end up in the 1-8 versus Oklahoma City, I don't think they're going to be ready for that series at that point in time.
Yeah, the thing that scared me most about OKC heading into this season and heading into that game specifically, because we hadn't seen them in a little bit, it's not SGA, it's not their offense. It's how good they are with their perimeter defense and how many different guys they can throw at you to slow you down. And I don't know, there's really not a fix for that. It's just going to be, are you hitting tough shots against them? And over a 7-game series, it's going to be really difficult. Now, if they could get Zoo going a little bit more, that makes things easier with higher percentage looks, but they're good against Ivica Zubac too. Hartenstein, after the first quarter where Zoo had the first 6 points of the game, Hartenstein started playing better against Ivica Zubac, and overall, they were better. All right.
I will say this, actually, Adam, this is probably a bigger critique I have of the way Ty Lue coached this game than the timeout issue at the end, which wasn't really impact, but it's like James Harden dribbles the ball off his foot. It happens. But I thought that the way that he balanced sort of the Zoo and Ben matchups with Hartenstein and the other Jalen Williams, who came off the bench as a small ball 5 for Oklahoma City, I did not like. I thought that he like he leaves Zoo in against a shooter. He overreacts to a mediocre shooter hitting a couple shots. And then he keeps Ben in the second quarter when Hartenstein comes back in and lets Hartenstein build a rhythm up against a 6'8" guy. I would have put Zoo back in to start the second quarter when Hartenstein came back in with foul trouble. Let Zoo stay aggressive against him on the glass. Try to draw that third foul. And then I think when, to that point about feeding Zoo, like you said, turnovers, they were trying to execute. They failed to execute. I think earlier in the game, when you have Zoo in, Hartenstein picks up those 2 fouls. Jalen Williams comes back in to be the small ball backup center. I think you have to force feed Zoo against smaller opponents. So I think James probably, that's on James maybe even more than Ty. I think James has to recognize that. And I think Ty has to be smart enough to then put Zoo back in early in the second quarter, knowing that Hartenstein is going to come in trying to make an impact after having sat down with foul trouble.
We mentioned him a little bit earlier because if James Harden is out tomorrow, we could see a scenario where Bogey is starting. How have you felt about Bogdanovic in terms of just how much he could help this team swing a playoff series? Because to me, unlike what I heard from Carlos Boozer earlier, that Kawhi is the X factor, it's like, well, he's the best player on the team, and yes, he needs to be healthy, but Bogey is a true X factor. Like, his hot shooting changes a lot for this team, and his on-ball creation also is big. How have you seen him develop so far as a Clipper?
Yeah, I mean, he started off slow, and definitely he had a bad first half of the season with Atlanta. Started off slow when he got to the Clippers. Some concerns there early on. I will certainly own up to the fact that in February I was thinking, oh gosh, I don't know if this guy's going to be in the rotation in the playoffs. He's had a fantastic March. I mean, he has just shot the ball so well. Like you said, he's getting to some mid-range spots. You can tell that he's comfortable. I think that James and Zoo both like playing with Bogey more than they like playing with Norm, because Bogey is just a more creative ball handler and passer than Norm is, which I think James likes because it takes a little more of the pressure off of him than like playing. Norm doesn't really create at all. So when James is out there with Norm isn't lifting any of James's workload. I think Bogey does that. And because Bogey's a more crafty passer, he's able to find Zoo more often and a little more deliberately. I would say Bogey's been good enough, Adam. I don't know, maybe this is a conversation worth having. I'm not saying that I would start Bogey over Norm tomorrow, but I'm wondering how many more games of not finding his rhythm after his hamstring injury before you would.
I heard you tiptoe around this a little bit on the podcast earlier today that I listened to with you and Robert, and I did want to ask you that. Like, how close are you to if Norm doesn't snap out of this quick? Because we know the story with Norm. If he's not hitting shots, he doesn't offer a lot else. Bogey actually does.
Well, and Adam, even more importantly than that, Bogey's hitting shots right now. Right. I think I'm still pretty good ways away from not starting Norman Powell. I think mentally, when you tell a player who's sort of playing not his best, coming back from injury, that you don't believe in him anymore as a coach, I think that can really damage you. What I will say is I would ride the hot hand a little heavier in some of these games. Which is if Bogey comes off the bench and is playing well, then maybe I would not play Norm as much. I think Norm, I don't think I would bench Norm until you got into a playoff moment where you had to.
Yeah.
But I think I would be a lot more willing right now, like in tomorrow's game against the Knicks, I would be a lot more willing to see Bogey play 30 minutes off the bench and Norm only play, 22 or 24 if Bogey's hitting shots and Norm isn't, right? And Norm has been, the shots are one thing, but he's really hurt the Clippers on defense since he came back from that hamstring.
Yeah, I think it would take a lot for him to replace him in the starting lineup. It would take a playoff type of moment where Norm just still hasn't snapped out of it. But I agree with you. With 11 games left, they could have more of a sense of urgency and just lean with heavier minutes on Bogey if he has it going and Norm doesn't that night. They need Norm to reach their ultimate ceiling, but it's like they also need to win games right now. So
yeah, I think in general, and I think we saw some of this with Brian Shaw, right? A little more urgency with the in-game rotational adjustments than maybe you would normally see in the regular season. And yeah, I think you're at the point now where you play each game like you're not trying to build consistency over, the course of a multiple month stretch like you would be in November. I think at this point you coach the game that's in front of you. And if that means making sort of drastic short-term rotation changes, especially in the second half of games, then I would do that. I think you coach to win each game because all of these games, I don't know if we're going to get into standings talk here, but like the Clippers don't have a lot of margin for error. They have to chase these games. If they're have a prayer in the third quarter of any game, they have to chase it, whatever that means on that night.
yeah, and the way B. Shaw did roll with Bogey in the game against the Cavaliers, where he didn't miss a shot, and it's not to say Coach Lue might have done the exact same thing. If a guy out there has not missed a shot, it's not uncommon for him to stay on the floor, especially with the type of shots that he was hitting. These weren't layups. And we know what Bogey can do when he gets hot. You got to roll with him. Let's go to a guy who is hitting a lot of shots, but I think you still have some questions on the other end. How has Kawhi looked to you defensively? Because I thought there was a big turning point in the final game of that 8-game road trip in Atlanta where Kawhi looked much better, and he brought that to Intuit Dome. And defensively, he's looking a lot more like himself.
Yeah, I think it's a regular season. Kawhi's a superstar. He's won the awards. I don't think we're going to see his best in the regular season. So if you're watching games and you see him miss a rotation or something in the second quarter, like he's just not locked in fully on that end. I think in a way that we can debate if it's what we like or don't like about the NBA, but that's the NBA, right? Down the stretch of games, I think we've seen him have moments where he's more locked in. I also say when the Clippers build a little momentum, like if they're getting out and running, if they force a couple stops in a row, you tend to see his intensity pick up a little bit and his hands be more active. I think we've seen a lot more of him using his length and hands in passing lanes. I feel good about it, frankly. What we haven't seen, and I don't know if we will see, Frank, because the Clippers have so many guys on this team who are so good at defending guards, like a Chris Dunn, a Derrick Jones Jr. We haven't seen him take on a matchup against a smaller, quicker player and stay in front of that player one-on-one, like at the top of the key in the way that maybe we would in past years have seen him, play pretty much anyone 1 through 5. He's been more of a wing forward defender for the Clippers this season. But yeah, I feel very good about where Kawhi Leonard is right now on both ends of the court.
Yeah, I think when the mid-range came back, plus he looked much more like himself defensively, I started to get to that place where I'm like, okay, I think he can be the same version of himself that he was last season. I think that's possible. And if you have that guy, you can do real damage because over the last 6 games now, he's shooting 62% from 8 to 16 feet out. That's more like Kawhi Leonard. It's still on a smaller sample size of like 30-something shots, but we'll take it compared to how he looked for a little bit in the mid-range, which, I mean, that's his superpower. That's what separates him from so many other players. Like, he has a unique skill set, not Liam Neeson unique, but it's unique for the NBA in today's modern NBA to have a guy who's that deadly in the mid-range to where you actually want them to take mid-range shots because he's so efficient there.
Yeah.
So that's been good to see. Before we get to the standings, we have to get an update on something. I think this is the 3rd time this season we've revisited the conversation of where Ivica Zubac sits in the hierarchy of centers in the league. And with just 11 games left, we got a pretty darn good sample size of how he has played versus other centers this season. And we can go off the criteria you gave, or it was either early in the season when you came on or in the preseason, of what we should look at. And it's who's been available, how centers have played this season. So we're not talking about Joel Embiid because he hasn't been available enough. If he's healthy, obviously he's better than Ivica Zubac. He hasn't been healthy, and they've had a miserable year. So let's just talk about the guys who are in the discussion that were close to Ivica Zubac that we talked about before. And we could probably start with somebody he just went up against. And I thought there was clear separation, and that would be Jared Allen. I think we were talking about him early in the season as take your pick between him and Ivica Zubac. I don't know if we can say that anymore, can we?
No. And you know, I think you have to be right. Like, let's think about Klay Thompson on all of those great Warriors teams with Draymond and KD and Steph. And you always kind of wondered, right, who could Klay be on a team with less around him? Would he step his game up if when Klay was 24 years old, he had been the best player on a bad team? Would he have developed a lot more ISO stuff? Like, who would Klay Thompson have been if he wasn't a support player for, you know, the best dynasty of the last decade? Maybe Jared Allen in a different situation where he's not playing on the best team in the Eastern Conference with a bunch of talented players around him. Maybe he steps into his own in the way that we've seen Zoo do this year. But the reality is Zoo has had to do that. Allen hasn't, and Zoo has successfully done it. He's definitely been the more productive of the two guys this season.
And I'll say this. It could be true that in an expanded role, Jared Allen could show more on the block. But I would highly question if anybody said he actually has more moves or more ability to post up his man than Ivica Zubac does in any situation. Like, I just think Zubac has more of a bag. Like, I think ISO Zoo gets you much more than ISO Jared Allen, regardless of situation.
Yes, Zoo is better. Throw the ball into him in the block. I think that Allen probably is still the better rim protector because he just has a better second jump than Zoo does. And that also, I think, in a different offense could lead to him adding a lot more value as a rim runner than Zoo could. So, you know, Jared Allen's still a very good player. He's having a very successful season. I just think that what Zoo is doing is of a different caliber.
So we're talking who has had a better season at the center position this year versus Big Zoo. We got him over Allen. Let's talk about the guys who are obviously over Ivica Zubac so we can see if he's top 5. Nikola Jokic is the one obvious one that stands out.
Yeah.
Victor Wembanyama gets a little bit interesting because now he's only played 46 games. Could you say he had a better season than Zubac? I mean, you might be able to make that argument still.
You might, but I wouldn't. I think he was. I think he was better. I think Wemby's was better in his 46 games than Zoo was in any 46 games that Zoo played. But I'll take 75 games of Zoo over 46. Like, I think 75 games of Zoo does more for you being a good basketball team for a season than 46 games of Wemby did this year.
Yeah,
but
he's not 30 games better than Zoo. Like, he's not so much better than him that you can account for 30 games missing and still say he's had a better season.
Yeah, I think we're almost we're having the Joel Embiid conversation, right? Like, Wemby is clearly better than Zoo. He just didn't play enough this year. Embiid clearly better than Zoo, just didn't play this year. So, you know, if we're talking about, like, I think, Adam, because we're near the end of the season here, I think let's use the award cutoff, 65 games, because I think, you know, Robert Flom said on our podcast yesterday, he thinks Ivica Zubac is going to get all NBA votes this year.
He won't make a team, but he'll get votes.
That's what Robert said. Yeah, I think he will make an all-defensive team. Now that the all-defensive teams have gone positionless and they can put 10 centers on there, I think he'll make it. I don't know if he'd make it if there was still only one spot for a center, but yeah. So let's use that cutoff. Let's use the 6 or like, so at this point, most teams have like 10 or 12 games left. So let's say someone has to have played like between, something like 55 games so far.
Fair enough. Daniel Gafford's at 51 games. Zoo's better.
No way.
Karl Anthony Towns.
This is one of the most interesting ones, I think, because
I think it's similar to the Sabonis conversation versus Zubac in some ways.
I was thinking when I came on today about this. Not just, I knew we were going to do the Zoo thing, of course, but I was thinking about
what gave it away
about Cat. As I was sitting here logging the call, I was thinking about Cat, and I was thinking. My first thought, my gut instinct is I ask myself this, if you swap these players, would the teams get better? And I was thinking that I was landing that this was one of the tricky ones where it's like both teams get worse. But actually, because of how many weapons the Clippers have that are great defensive players and slashers who can't shoot the ball, I think adding the best shooting big man of all time, it allows you to do so much more with Chris Dunn. It allows you to do so much more with Derrick Jones Jr. It allows you to do so much more with Ben Simmons. And Cat is probably just
roster differently, though, to have somebody else that's not Drew Eubanks or Ben Simmons as a backup big.
Yeah, we're talking about a fundamentally different team, and we're talking about a team where you're probably reversing the great defensive identity that the Clippers have. You're probably going to being like, no, now we're going to be actually a top 10 offense, but probably a more average defense, right? So I think I'm prepared to let Cat have this one still.
Okay, I'm fine with that. But I will make this argument. And I say this for Sabonis all the time, because before last season, I was arguing with a friend that, if I'm trying to win a championship, I don't think you can get there with Sabonis as your starting 5 unless you have the perfect 4 next to him. That's like an Evan Mobley or a unicorn, a guy that can shoot, that can also defend the rim, because those are the two things lacking with Sabonis. I think he might have some fatal flaws. He puts up huge numbers, but I think he might have fatal flaws that leave his ceiling a little bit lower than having Zoo as your starting 5.
Yeah, I think, again, we're talking about, to be fair, we're talking about that comparison between Zoo and Jarrett Allen. We're talking about Zoo is just doing a different caliber of role than Allen is. Sabonis is in a different caliber of role than Zoo is. I think if we want to talk about Sabonis in a vacuum for a moment, I think Sabonis being as bad as he is on defense is one of the big reasons why the Kings, after their one magic season of making the playoffs, really have not had a successful little stretch where they've been kind of consistently disappointing. Like his defense, the gap there on defense may be as big as the gap is on offense. When you talk about sort of roster construction, I think that Sabonis, you're getting further with Sabonis as your best player than you are with Zoo as your best player.
Yes, but there's a cap.
But can I say this, right? I think if I said what I just said, you get further with Sabonis as your best player than you do with Zoo as your best player. I think everyone would kind of be like, yeah, Sabonis is more of a hub. He does more with the ball in his hands, but Zoo's sort of a better defender, all that. Here's the problem with that statement, though, Adam. Sabonis is the Kings' best player. Zoo is the Clippers' best player. The Clippers are better than the Kings. Zoo has been the Clippers' best player this season.
Now it's veering into a little bit of a different conversation. I think when you account for his defense, you can definitely obviously make that argument. I do wonder, though, without James Harden's floor on offense, how bad would they be? Now, if you replace him with somebody else, can you make that work? Yeah, but we're getting into a lot of hypotheticals. But yes, he is right there with James Harden as being their two most impactful, important players this season. I just think the guy you need to reach a championship level to be able to have Sabonis as a 5 is so hard to get. He's a unicorn that it's not worth building around somebody like Sabonis because of his fatal flaws. Unless you have Evan Mobley, unless you have Porzingis next to him, I think you cannot be a championship team. Whereas Ivica Zubac, no, you're not going to be a championship team with him playing as your number 1. But if he's a top 3 player on your team, I think you can get there.
So let me ask you this, Adam. Let's take it back about 8 weeks. Sacramento calls. They want to do Sabonis for Zoo. I think I would do it.
I wouldn't because of his contract and his limitations.
Well, okay, sorry. Contracts aside.
Well,
yeah. Contracts aside, they want to do Sabonis for Zoo.
If
contracts
aside, yes, I'm thinking about it because I might be able to then flip Sabonis and get a lot more for him. But I think he has fatal flaws. You can't win at the highest level with him unless you have the perfect guy next to him, and getting that guy is too difficult.
I don't know. The Clippers have Nico Batum.
If Nico Batum was 25, maybe he'd do it.
If Nico Batum was 25, he'd be a shooting guard.
There's that too.
I think I agree with you, Adam, that Zoo is more likely to be like the 3rd or 4th best player on a great team. Sabonis is more likely to be the best, or maybe, a 1B on a mediocre team. I do think that with, again, setting contracts aside, right? I do think that this sort of like, the Clippers are in a weird spot right now. They're trying to run the clock out on these draft picks that they owe with an aging core that isn't really a contender status. I think Sabonis gets you a little more of a high floor over the next 3 to 5 years of resetting sort of the clock here on these eras. So that's sort of where my thinking is. But I think you're right. Once you factor in the $40 million a year versus Zoo's very team-friendly extension, you take that out of the question. But I do think, just from the sake of like, if the Clippers make that trade on February 1st, do they win more games this season than they will having not made that trade on February 1st? I think they would have. Yeah, I can go Sabonis here, I think.
All right. Well, then we got 3 guys above Zoo right now: Jokic, Cat, and Sabonis. Now, Kristaps hasn't played enough games. He's only at 36. We already talked about Embiid. Mark Williams is not better and has only played 37 games. I'm looking at some of the per ratings. Okay, Alperen Şengün. Yeah. This was one we had an interesting conversation, I think, about before.
I think he's the name the other name, that I'm waiting for us to fall on here. I just like Zoo better. I don't know. When I watch Şengün play, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. Obviously, he's a very good player, but yeah, I think you have to maybe give some credit. Like, the Rockets are in 2nd place in the West this year. They've kind of emerged in the last few weeks as that, but I'm gonna go Zoo here. I think Şengün is like just Sabonis is the next evolution of Şengün, and Zoo probably for me at his impact level is right in the middle of those tiers right now.
They both have some baby Joker in them, but they're still far away from where I'd need them to be. But so we have Sabonis.
Well, and Şengün is 22.
Oh yeah.
So again, if we go to that trade question, right, and we say, do you on February 1st would you trade Zoo for Şengün? The answer is probably yes because of age. Şengün has an extension, but it's not a hugely expensive extension considering how young he is and how talented he is. But I think if you make that trade on February 1st, I think the Clippers win fewer games. I'm gonna give the edge to Zoo on this one. After not being a homer about Cat and not being a homer about Sabonis, I am gonna be a homer about Şengün.
Like, guys, for thinking that Zoo is not better than Şengün, it's like Şengün can shoot, rebound, is mobile. Great. He's not better from 5 to 9 feet out. He's not better at the rim, and he can't defend on the other end like Ivica Zubac can, who last season rated out as the best rim protector in the league, and he just had 2 blocks in the fourth quarter against OKC that line up with a guy who's elite still on that end. Like, you have to account for the defensive side when you're talking about your 5. He has to be a defensive anchor to me for you to win at the highest level. Şengün is not that. Neither is Sabonis, but we're giving him the nod. So we got three guys over.
I'll say, Adam, for Şengün has more of a bag offensively than Zoo does as a playmaker, but he doesn't have as much skill in the post as Zoo does. And, Şengün is shooting less than 50% from the field this year as a center. Some of that is because he takes threes, but it's not like he's actually a threat from 3. He's shooting 24% from 3. He's shooting 52% on his 2s. Zoo is shooting 62% on his 2s. Zoo is also rebounding more offensively and defensively. He's substantially better on defense. What Şengün has going for him is that he has better vision and passing. So you can use him as a hub more effectively than you can as Zoo. But Zoo is scoring almost as much at way more efficiency, and he's a way better defender. So, yeah.
To me, I value rim protection and just elite rim finishing at my center position when I'm trying to build a championship level team. Şengün, maybe he improves in those areas later, but this season, I'm taking Zoo.
I think off the top of my head, Adam, I don't think there's another name. You tell me if I'm wrong. If I might be missing someone, because
I think you're wrong.
Okay, tell me. I'm probably forgetting someone. You tell me.
I don't know how many games he's at, but I know he's back. Anthony
Davis. Here's the thing, man. Is Anthony Davis a center?
He's been playing center way more than power forward the last few years.
I feel like the Dallas Mavericks just started Kai Jones next to Anthony Davis in a game because Anthony Davis insists on playing with another big. So
the majority of his minutes this season were at center.
He's below our game threshold for what it's worth. He's at 44. He's not going to be eligible for end of season awards.
Okay. So he's had a better season than him then.
I think he is a better player than Ivica Zubac. I am not sure that he counts as a center. I think that's kind of an ongoing open discussion. But he is a better player than Ivica Zubac. He hasn't played enough games.
Okay, I got one more that's also in this vein. Evan Mobley.
Evan Mobley is definitely not a center.
But he does play a lot of center.
He's playing next to Jared. He's a big, but
they start together, but then they stagger.
I'm not giving that one.
Okay. So we got Jokic, Cat, Sabonis. Are we saying Zoo's the 4th best center in the NBA this season?
Jokic, Cat, Sabonis.
Lively's not better.
Someone else?
We said he's better than Şengün.
Jokic,
Kessler's not better.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm with you.
Ooh. You said Triple J is not a center.
I'm trying to think. Well, has he played enough games?
I think so. Let me check. I'm checking right now. He plays next to ZD some, but not always. He's at 64 games. I mean,
okay, so yeah, he is. I feel like at times I've caught a Memphis game where it's felt like they were really leaning into like those like two big looks with him as the 4, and then definitely stretches of the season it's felt like he's been, I don't know if
like they brought
he's a
Ziti
pretty
off the
even
bench
split.
last game against Memphis. Ziti came off the bench.
Well, is he better than Zoo?
I was gonna say, like, I still might take Zoo over Triple J. I'm not hating on Triple J. I think he's really good, but I'm also not as, I don't know, intrigued as some are.
I think the blocks that he really, those highlight blocks, 3 blocks a game that he kind of blew up on, where he started kind of becoming a darling because of that. They said at 1.6 now. It's way down. And
look at his rebounds are down because he plays out on the perimeter.
Well, it's not even that his rebounds aren't even really down. He's just never been a good rebounder.
Oh, true.
Right? Like he's never averaged 7 rebounds a game. He's never averaged 7.0. Every single season of his career has been below that. That's bad for a power forward, let alone bad for a center. And I think the rim protective effectiveness dropping off. I do think what he adds as a shooter, in addition to then his athleticism, has been really valuable to Memphis this season. I don't think it's a given that he's better than Ivica Zubac.
Would you trade Zoo for him if contracts are out of it?
Contracts were out of it. Would you trade Zoo for him? I think I would, because I think, first of all, we've got 3 years younger, which is important. This is an old Clippers team. The medium-term outlook on their talent pool is not good. 3 years younger is important. And I think Jackson is a little more versatile because of the shooting, because he can play 4 and 5, that whatever comes next for this Clippers organization after James Harden, after Kawhi Leonard, Jackson is probably a better fit with different combinations of other guys you might bring in than Zoo. I'm not sure. I think it might be a wash here on, like, if the Clippers made that deal on February 1st, how does that affect the last third of the season for them? I don't know that it makes a huge difference. The Clippers do have good support rebounding. Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Chris Dunn, Bogey apparently is a good support rebounder now. Memphis would really suffer if that trade happened. Memphis would definitely be a lot worse.
Yeah.
But part of that is because JJJ is playing half of his minutes at power forward for them. Zoo and Edie, is not a conversation. So
people are bringing up Ayton in here. It's like, I don't care just because he's gotten the best of Zoo a few different times. No. And he's been featured much more on his teams than Zoo was prior to this year. Ayton is not better. Have you looked at his rim protection numbers? He's not close to Ivica Zubac. In fact, Robert Williams, by every metric, the Portland Trailblazers were better with him on the floor this season than Ayton. I do have another name.
I think that Ayton is very talented, but like, I live in Portland, so I'll go watch a Blazers game, right? He is not trying, and we can say like, well, he has the talent to do whatever, but like, how many years of not trying are we going to get to before it's just like he's a low motor player and that matters?
Did you know that Zubac has the second best plus minus on off numbers in the league to Nikola Jokic right now?
I think I did, but I think it's because Brian Seaman told me, not personally I think Brian talked about it on a broadcast.
Somebody brought that up in the chat. There's one more name that's in the discussion. I think I know where you're going. And so do we have Zoo at 4 or is he at 5 now with Triple J?
I want to put them in a tie.
So it's a conversation. You can be persuaded maybe. Bam Adebayo.
Nah, not this year. Not this year.
I mean, you could just watch
Nope.
the last game between them. Bam
Yeah,
had like 7.
Yeah, Zoo punked him. Oh man. Yeah, no, not this year.
So
I don't know. I mean, are we in like is Porzingis?
He's played 30 games.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going. Maybe you want to get. I think if you and I are saying it's a toss up between Zoo and JJJ, then JJJ is probably better.
But then he's no worse than 5th still. It goes Jokic.
We're still at 5th. Yeah.
Jokic, Cat, Sabonis, Triple J, Zubac.
Yeah.
First of all, DeAndre Ayton was disinterested at times with the Phoenix Suns, man. This goes back long before he went to Portland and went to a losing team. If you didn't know about his attitude and his lack of motor, like that's been a problem. I'm not taking him over Ivica Zubac in any way, shape, or form. Zubac's at worst is 5th, guys, definitively. This season. We made the cutoff. You got to be available to play 65 games. That took out Wemby. That took out Embiid. That took out Kristaps Porzingis. Guys like that. Who is having the better season? Zubac has had a top 5 season for a center. That's it.
So then you look at next year and you think, okay, who are the top 10 centers in the NBA next year? We don't have to build the whole list, but you add in some of these guys back, right? Like you assume Porzingis, playing a whole year, maybe Embiid definitely playing a whole year. Anthony Davis, I still don't know if he's going to be a power forward or center. I will say, Adam, this is just my thing. As long as they are starting him next to another big, I don't care if 75% of his minutes come at center. If they are starting a bad starting lineup because he insists on playing like it with the Lakers, he's like, Jackson Hayes has to start next to me so that I'm not really the center. I'm not calling him a center if he doesn't want to be. That's it. Center is, you have to want to be a center to be a center. But yeah, I think, and then you look at like some guys you expect improvement from, younger guys, maybe Şengün, right, at 22 years old, is a guy who was really relevant in this conversation.
Triple J will be. If the Kings reconstruct their roster around Sabonis, it might. I mean, we have him in front of Ivica Zubac right now, but just moving forward from my point of view, maybe they'll prove me wrong. And I'll feel like there is a way to insulate Sabonis with the right squad and the right number of defenders. But right now, if you can't be a top 10 defense in the league, I just don't consider you a contender, and they've never been one with Sabonis.
Actually, I mean, Triple J and Sabonis would be a really fun power forward center pairing.
Yeah.
But also,
that's the thing. That will never happen. The guy you need to get next to Sabonis to make Sabonis work is too expensive.
And well, that's the thing. Like, but can you be a good team if you're paying those two guys $90 million? Because then, like, where are you? Someone needs to play wing defense. Someone needs to dribble the ball up and pass it to them, right? Like, yeah. I think Zoo. I think. We'll see how the playoffs go, but I think when if we sit down again in October, I think that Zoo will be in the top 10 heading into next season, even once, we start adding these guys like Embiid and Wembanyama and Anthony Davis maybe back on the list.
Yeah. Everybody healthy, he should be right there at 9 or 10 with everybody healthy in the league. But this season, he's been a top 5 center when you account for availability and production overall. Okay, before we get out of here, Lucas, you brought it up a little bit earlier. What percentage chance would you put on the Clippers ending up in the 6th spot and out of the play-in?
I think they have about a 30% chance of avoiding the play-in tournament.
Because Minnesota's schedule is so weak. Golden State's
and Minnesota has fewer games left. So not only do they have less opportunities to lose and a weaker strength of schedule. That's going to be a challenge. Golden State, interested to see. Have we heard if is Steph playing tonight?
I don't believe he is. Chat, you got word on that? I am interested in watching this game with Jimmy Butler back in Miami versus Heat culture. Did you see what he said about Heat culture, by the way? He actually put it really well. Shockingly well. Like the way he phrased it being overrated. Like Robert Flom, he might fall in love with Jimmy Butler after this quote.
Unlikely, but hit me.
But yeah, that game is tonight. I don't think Steph is playing.
Yeah, Warriors loss in this one would be huge. Warriors loss in this game would be huge for the Clippers. Yeah.
Yeah, we need Miami to win this game.
Ivica in the chat says Steph is out.
Do you believe that Memphis could really slide into the play-in?
Do I believe that they could or that they will?
Well, I
think they could.
High probability.
I think it's in play.
What percentage chance?
Maybe it's low, 10, 20% chance.
They do have the 7th toughest schedule remaining. The Clippers are at 13 right now.
But things get so weird in April, man. Like you're going up against an opponent that's like a schedule loss, and that opponent is locked into their seed in the Eastern Conference, so they decide not to play. And then you go up against a team that's already shut it down for the year, and they have some guy up from the G League you have no tape in who goes for 30, 10, and 10. Like, April gets really – it's strength of schedule is a little harder of an indicator to rely on in the last week of the season. I think they could slide. It's just a matter of, right, like they're still 3 losses ahead of the Clippers, I think, 28-31. Or is it 29 now?
I'm looking it up.
But either way, like the Clippers are going to lose more games. The Clippers are not going to win out. So then you need Memphis to lose that many more games than the Clippers do.
Yeah, Memphis is at 28 losses. Clippers at 31, so 3 losses back.
Yeah, so like if Memphis closing 8-3, totally reasonable, likely, right? The Clippers closing 11-0, almost impossible with the schedule that they have in front of them. Maybe the Clippers close 9-2, and then you're hoping that Memphis closes like 6-5. Like it's in play. It's possible. That's possible. 9-2, 6-5. It's possible, but it's a really kind of slim margin there. I will say that Memphis isn't the only team that has a chance of sliding. If that's interesting to you.
No, Phoenix doesn't have Jokic currently. The Lakers have been playing poorly.
Well, Phoenix has never had Jokic, Adam.
Excuse me. I'm chatting with somebody in here about DeAndre and his entire. Like, he's like, you're talking about one game with him getting benched in that game 7. I'm like, no, I'm talking about his entire tenure with the Phoenix Suns was underwhelming. Like, how can you argue otherwise?
Getting benched in a game 7 does not come out of nowhere.
Right.
You don't get it. Like, I mean, I'm a, you may have been watching the NCAA tournament. I'm a St. John's alum. St. John's had Big East Player of the Year, RJ Lewis. They benched him down the stretch of that game. And a lot of people online talking about, you can't bench the Big East Player of the Year just because he had a bad shooting game. He did not get benched because he had a bad shooting game. He got benched because he ran a lane in transition. He didn't get passed to. He threw his arms up and pouted. He didn't come back on defense, and his man got a layup on the other end. Coach calls a timeout. He comes out of the and that doesn't come out of nowhere. That comes from a guy who has had maturity issues all season long, selfishness issues all season long. The coach, if he had one play with bad effort, you could say, all right, let's it happens, right? But that's once you recognize that that's what you're getting from one of your players, and that's more the situation Ayton was in, where it's like, no, Ayton wasn't loafing on one possession in a game 7, right? Like the coach already had an idea of Ayton as a low motor, low effort guy.
The Ayton excuse makers like, well, he just wanted the ball more. It's like, well, he got his shot in Portland and he's kind of squandered it. He hasn't turned into a distinctly different player or lived up to the hype on draft night at all. He's good. He's talented. He doesn't seem to have the drive or the motor. Like most people in Portland, they'll tell you stories about this stuff. Lucas, do you have any firsthand accounts of the pulse of Blazers fans?
Oh, everyone hates DeAndre Ayton. He doesn't try. You can go sit in the arena and watch him not try. I know someone's saying, why are we judging him on the past? Well, you don't want to judging him on the present is worse than judging him on the past. The past is him getting benched in Phoenix was like the high mark of his career. It's been all down since then. And maybe in 3 or 4 years, he finds himself on another situation and he's a little more motivated and the role is right and whatever. But we're talking about who is more productive this season.
That's easy. Okay, back to the standings. What I meant was Nikola Jokic has not been playing for Denver as of late. The Lakers have been sliding. I think they've lost 7 of their last 10. And something I worried about with them and that defensive effort they had in that big victory they got in Denver was how sustainable is it to play small and scramble the way they do and actually have enough energy to keep going? Well, as of late, they looked very tired. They have looked gassed. But the way things are shaking out, Lucas, I don't want to say I'd rather see the Clippers stay out of the 6th spot, but it's not all bad if you're in that 7-8 matchup, especially if you can get home court in that play-in game, because it looks like the Houston Rockets have a very good chance of ending up the 2 seed. And I'm not saying they'd be pushovers. I'm not saying Clips in 5. It could go 6 or 7, but I still feel like based upon inexperience and not having a true top-tier superstar with the Houston Rockets, I'd rather see them. Is that fair?
I think it's fair. I also think, the Rockets have kind of kicked the Clippers' butts this year with energy and athleticism and transition play. Maybe it is one of those times. It certainly would not shock me to have a complete 180 where like the grown-ups decide that it's time for grown-up basketball if these teams meet in the playoffs, right?
And they haven't had Kawhi for any of the games so far against them.
Here's what I'll say, Adam, to your point. If the Clippers end up in the 7-8 game and they win it and they get the 7 seed, no harm, no foul. Really not. It's not a worse situation than having the 6 seed. I think the risk of losing the 7-8 game is so great that you have to push as hard as you can to avoid it, because you show up and Minnesota decides to hit 23s that night, right? Like things can happen. But yeah, if they end up in that first playing game, which is the most likely outcome right now, that they will be in the 7-8 game and they win it, I'm not going to be sweating that Houston matchup any more than I would be sweating whoever they would get in a 3-6 or a 4-5.
So my prediction 2 weeks ago was Minnesota would jump Golden State, and the final game of the regular season up in San Francisco between the Clippers and Warriors would decide home court in the 7-8 play-in game, which is big. How would you feel about them matching up against Golden State versus Minnesota in that game?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. Minnesota just had a stretch where I think they, Randall didn't play in all of these games, but in the games that Randall played in, they had won 20 Randall games in a row. And now they've had some kind of bad looking losses in the last, week and a half since then. I think the Warriors have been killer with Steph and Jimmy, but sustainability and energy level is a question there. I would rather play that 7-8 game against the Wolves than the Warriors.
Wow.
I also say it would be playing the Warriors, hosting the Warriors in the 7-8 game would be an incredible test of Intuit Dome.
Would you rather host Golden State, though, versus go on the road to face Minnesota, if it's between those two things?
This is the test of Intuit Dome. If you're hosting Golden State in the 7-8 game, how many Warriors fans are going to be in the building?
It's going to be significant, but there's not going to be any in the wall.
The Clippers have been really good at home. the Wolves crowd. I remember that last playing game. The Wolves crowd was really into that game. I would probably rather play at home, regardless. I think
I would too. I'll take
Clippers
my
have been
chances
very
at
good
home.
at the Dome. Yeah.
Also, Kawhi has traditionally been very good against Jimmy Butler in matchups. Since Kawhi became Kawhi, Steph, yeah, there's not a lot you can do, but they have at least they're 3-0 against Golden State. They haven't seen this new iteration. It's totally different, but they do have an idea of how they want to guard Steph at least. And they do have the guys with Chris Dunn, with DJ. They have a lot of guys they can throw at them. And if Kawhi is ramped up at that point defensively, he can guard Jimmy Butler. And I'm good with that. And Ivica Zubac, I know they figured some stuff out with their big men with Golden State, but Zoo should still be an advantage.
Yeah. If that's the game, if it's Clippers Warriors in the 7-8, Zoo absolutely, like, you could predict the outcome of that game from Zoo's box score line.
Yeah, you're right. He ends up with anything around 20 and 14, you probably won.
Yeah. But if you start seeing him with 28 minutes, 5 fouls, 14 and 8, Clippers probably lost that game by double digits.
And I'll be pulling my hair out because I'll be saying they didn't give him the ball enough. We won today with Lucas Hann, don't call him Han on, from 213 Hoops, our boss, joining me here on Clippers Talk. Lucas, appreciate you as always. Thanks for doing this, and I'm glad we could get down to it and say definitively Ivica Zubac was a top 5 center this season. We left no doubt.
Yeah.
If you're doubting anything, rewind it and listen to it again. Lucas, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, man. Have a good one.
I'm Adam Oslin. This has been another edition of Clippers Talk. We will have your pregame show starting tomorrow at, I think the game tips off at 4:30. So,
That's
yes,
right.
we have 3:30 pregame. Clippers in New York taking on the Knicks.